Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Anyway, so without further ado, let me welcome one of my favorite people here and one of the luminary ladies of the Blue Ridge here in Roanoke, Virginia, Azurae Windwalker. Hello, Azurae. How are you?
Hello, Bernard. Wonderful to see you.
It's nice to actually see you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're seeing my old house.
Right?
You've got to come.
I do.
You'll get over your cold quick. I'll put you on the amethyst mat, and we'll just fry those viruses right out.
I'm sure. Thank you. So, Azurae, we were talking a little bit before the show started about how the Schumann resonance has seemed to have gone up recently. And with that, a lot of us are feeling a little bit of shift in consciousness, whether it's detoxing our body, our minds, our spirit, all kinds of weird stuff has been going on. Well, I don't want to say weird, but evolutionary stuff. Can you want to start by telling us a little bit about the Schumann resonance, what it is, and how did you hear about it, and how can we tell if we're being affected by it?
The Schumann resonance is actually the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And I had a friend, another shamanic practitioner, Humble Bear, in Blacksburg. And he had a good friend who was a scientist that used to measure it. And so this was about 10 or 15 years ago. And it started out at 7.8 and had been for thousands of years. And then when it went up to like 13, and sometimes 20 when there was earthquakes and things, we just thought that was outrageous. But then last week when it went up to 36 and 50, it's a wonder we're still alive because the vibration is increasing so much. And then what is happening is the frequency, the higher frequency, is pushing out people's darkness to be looked at and cleared, and it's working with their DNA, and all that causes the toxins to come out. So the advice is to forgive whoever you need to forgive, and to do a detox diet. And I've been drinking a lot of lemon juice and aloe vera and getting through fairly well.
Now, going back to the work that you're doing and what you're sharing with your students and whatnot. And by the way, everyone, if you're interested, Azurae, you're doing a apprenticeship workshop, or are they like an apprentice? How does that work to become an apprentice?
Well, people have to go through the Practical Shamanism Uplift series, which there's at the Livestream Center. It goes all the way through April, and it goes through May, monthly workshops here at the Amethyst Center, as well as the Tacoma Park Metaphysical Chapel in Silver Springs, Maryland. And I'll be starting one soon also in D.C. They have to go through that series, and also a series of Nature Spirit Energy Medicine workshops that happen in the summertime. And from the people who make it through those, then I choose people who I want to work with based on their skills and their willingness to work and their ethical considerations and how they play well with others.
Right.
Work with them for 4 years for an actual apprenticeship.
Oh, it's a 4-year program. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow, you get a lot in 4 years.
This is like through the shaman's doorway. But many of the techniques that I've been teaching for, or have been channeled for, the last 25, 30 years, have been put together in a new way with this specially built medicine wheel that brings in these 5 ascension rays. And with shamanism, intent is everything. And so the intention of this series, the way it's been put together, is to help uplift people out of the whole fear, trauma, drama scheme into a higher level of mastery. And even though many of the people who've studied with me, they've come back, it's affecting them in different ways because we're working at a much higher frequency, and the intent is different. And with shamanic practitioners, we're not the ones actually doing the work. It's the chief healing angels and the spirit of nature and the White Brotherhood healing teams of myself and the people studying who are actually doing everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that makes sense, definitely. When you let's talk a little bit about what the Ascension medicine wheel is. Is that what you were just referring to? The Ascension work utilizing a shamanic medicine wheel?
Yeah. Well, I have a canvas medicine wheel that I've had for years. I've gone through several ones of them that I take everywhere I go. But I was told by my spiritual masters that I work with that I was supposed to make a special medicine wheel that would help these ascension rays come through. And I had worked with a guy for about a year that had cancer, and these different rays came through, and he would draw them, and it would lift us both up when I was working on him. And I didn't realize what they were, and then I kind of fell into a book that said, these rays are coming through. The first one is blue-green that clears out heavy energy, and the second one is turquoise that lifts us up, and then there's an opalescent one that raises us up so we can work out of our fifth dimension crystalline body, and then there's a pinkish peach ray that comes through that harmonizes. Then finally this golden ray comes through, which is ups us to a high spiritual mastery, like Christ consciousness. It's the color of Christ consciousness. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the combination of the stones and how it's built induces these rays to come through. And so part of the workshop series is going through an initiation in this medicine wheel where you are really lifted up. Mm-hmm. And thus it's called Practical Shamanism Uplift.
Oh, okay. I get it. I like it.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's an ascension machine.
Yes. And it's amazing when we do the work, we really can feel that. You can feel like the old layers being pulled away and a whole new perspective comes to light. Utilizing these tools, it really does help us to get greater consciousness and clarity. With that, let me ask you a little bit about working with spirit guides, as I noticed that you talk a lot about working with the spirit guides and the Great White Master Brotherhood. I'm sorry, I mix them all up all the time. But just in general, Azurae, how does one find their spirit guide? I get that question asked quite a bit.
Some people have a really easy time of it, and other people don't. We have to clear that teaching that we received when we were younger, that things like that don't exist, and that we're not worthy of working with these higher spiritual masters. It's just not true. We all have the essence of divinity, Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or divine center within us. We all have that. But I have a spirit doctor that I work with. His name is White Eagle, and he's kind of like a dating service. And so with my students, he hooks the students up with the spiritual masters that they're more in tune with, and they have an easier time of connecting with their spiritual masters and with their animal totems and with the higher spiritual guides. You can have spirit guides that aren't any more elevated than you are. Well, who wants that? I don't want to take advice from somebody who's like been in prison or something. So we always ask for the highest possible, in really high spiritual help, and we get that because we ask for it, and we do the work beforehand to clear the heavy energy and to raise the people up to a frequency where they can connect and communicate.
You made a very good point. So many of us who work in this field or do this work, we especially if we're just getting onto the path, we don't think about. Well, let me reverse all that and start all over. A lot of people get confused because just because it's a disembodied entity or a disembodied spirit or whatnot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're wiser than you, or like you just said. You made a very good observation there that you want to raise your vibration in order to attract that particular guide of a higher vibration.
Well, that's why we do all the prep work to power up and raise our frequency up before we do any work on levels like that. So we'll attract the highest, possible spiritual guidance. And we also have a technique that I teach where you clear the energy of where you're working, and there's a special energetic protective shield for your home or for your sacred space that doesn't allow non-beneficial energies or entities to come in. And so we teach that as well as personal shielding, because people who are into this kind of work many times are empaths, and they're very sensitive, and they get picked on by people and other energies that want to drain their energy or manipulate them. So, we work with personal shielding, and that also helps lift people up because you're not leaking your energy all the time.
And boy, so, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And, and then I do private work with people, taking hooks out and cutting cords to non-beneficial energies and entities and such like that. But, I've been through all the terrible side of it myself.
Right.
And
you've come out the other end.
These techniques for myself, and then I just started sharing them with other people.
Azurae, we're coming up on a commercial break. They're cutting us off right now. We'll be back in about 2 minutes, and we're going to talk about totem animals and other healing work that Azurae works on. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we are the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. So please, if you can, do go to freedomslips.com and make a donation. If you make a donation, just send a little note and say that you are listening to the Just Bernard Show. We are speaking with Azurae Windwalker today, and actually before the break, Azurae, because this is a good point to make as far as those of us light workers, empaths, those of us who just feel everything, and I'm a feeler, God knows I'm a feeler, and I do talk about work and creating psychic shield and whatnot, but one of the questions that I had going through this process was how can we differentiate whether it's our energy or are we picking up on somebody else's energy? Do you have like a little tip or anything for anybody to tell the difference? Are you sucking up somebody else or is it yours?
One of the first things that I teach my students is how to do muscle testing, how to self-muscle test. And since I'm holding the phone, I can't demonstrate it for you. I do it like this, but most people make a circle and then with the other hand try to open the circle and just ask, because your higher consciousness, your divine center knows, okay, is this mine or is it somebody else's? Lots of times it'll be a combination because like attracts like, and we resonate with other people. So it may be a little bit of somebody else's and it may be part of ours too. If there wasn't some kind of trigger, it probably wouldn't affect us anyway. And the other thing is you can send it love. I've got a test that I teach for understanding whether a spirit guide or an animal totem in a shamanic journey, or even in your current life, is good for you. And you draw energy up from the sun and from the center of the earth with your breath, and fill up with energy, power up, and then you send a pink love light from your heart to that person, to that entity, to that spirit guide, and ask that energy to come back to you, which you'll either feel or see. And if it comes back, that means the person is working with you from a loving place. If it doesn't, you just say, "Get thee behind me." And the same thing with a guide, or there are entities out there that are really good at masquerading. Some of them are in human form, and some of them are in spirit form. But the love test always works.
I like that. I'm going to have to try that myself.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about totem animals, and believe it or not, after all these years, I still get a little confused as to what is the difference between a totem animal and a spirit guide. Or are they one and the same? And what is a totem animal, and how do we use them? What role do they play?
Well, classically speaking, a spirit guide has more of a humanoid form, although they might be from some other planet or dimension. And the animal totem, is an animal, but it can be one that swims or flies or crawls or whatever. And many times these animal totems are archetypes. They may be stored within your DNA memory or your past life memory where you've had a strong affinity to them. And some of them may come down through your family. My family is Wolf Clan, Cherokee. And Wolf Clan people are teachers, and we're spiritual warriors. And, I kind of like fit the bill. But your animal spirit guide can morph into a human at times, because in not an ordinary reality, anything can happen. So sometimes I see White Eagle as an actual White Eagle, and sometimes I see him in a Native American form with white hair and white buckskin, and looks like the classical movie kind of Indian dude. And so things are kind of nebulous. But the animals will, they have certain spiritual qualities that you need or that you already excel in that kind of fill in the blank for your gifts or talents. And so someone who needs to be aggressive might get an animal like a bear, or a healer may also get a bear. And someone who needs more freedom might attract a horse. And so there's a great book called Animal Speaks and Animal Life by Ted Andrews, and that has many of the meanings of the different animals. So when I was in the Cats Native American Medicine Society, the way we looked at it was that you had to have a meeting with them that was auspicious in nature, and or dream of them, and sometimes you may just collect them and you don't know why. Actually, they're kind of collecting you. But my teacher said you had to have an experience with them in 3 different ways, and it's so they kind of claim you. And so I knew what mine were.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. That actually explains a lot for me. To reiterate a little bit in my brain, the totem animals are, like you said, they're archetypes, and they emit like a cosmic resonance that is a part of all of nature, or one aspect of nature. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, and everybody's seen. You probably have bear for one. You have a bear body build, and bear people are usually healers, and bear people are strong, and how they get through life is they kind of push through, and but possum people play dead, and deer people jump over, and they're agile. So everybody. In fact, I do soul petroglyph portraits of people, and I don't have one to show you, but I get the people's animal totems as well as the kind of angels they work with, and different sacred symbols and elements for people, which what I'm drawing is people's soul in its perfected form. And obviously we're not perfect, but what I'm seeing is their perfected form, and by having it and working with it, it helps people get to where they're going.
Oh, nice. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, and so I learned that. I learned to see people's animal totems around them from an old Kiowa woman who used to see people's animal totems as they crawl in the door of the sweat lodge. And I learned how to do that from her, and had many teachers. I was lucky to have 2 teachers that taught me about the petroglyphs and what the different petroglyphs meant. So it's like a petroglyph drawing that's in pastels, and I'll be doing it at the Body Mind Spirit Fest at Unity, June the 10th and 11th, I think is the date. Yeah, or can come here. I'll do them anytime. I even do them distantly, and I use them also for soul retrieval. It helps helps me do soul retrieval with people.
Very good, very good. And actually, I was about to ask you a little bit more about that. I personally, right now, I'm exploring my method of doing retrieval on my clients or my students. And I'm so fascinated by it. And it seems that the more I'm studying it and I'm putting it into practice, the more there is. I mean, it's like there's so much past life connections and, curses or, any kind of old entities that might be coming around. But tell us a little bit why is it important for you as a healer and a teacher to do shamanic soul retrieval. And why is it important for us to do soul retrieval? A lot of people don't quite understand what it is and why do we do it.
Well, when people go through various traumas and dramas, part of their soul goes missing in action, basically out of self-preservation, and they go to another dimension. And we all know people that we've looked at who kind of had dead eyes. Avoid them. But they've lost so much of their soul, there's no light behind their eyes. And when I do soul retrieval, instantly the person can look in the mirror and there's more light behind their eyes. They see it. I mean, from 1 second to the next, it's just crazy awesome. So when you have more of your soul pieces back, your soul is like a magnet that attracts your soul purpose and your good to you. And when you have more of your soul present, then you're healthier, you're happier, you're more at peace, and it's easier for you to manifest that which you incarnated on the earth for this time around. And I've worked with thousands of people and they, especially the ones who come back, for repeated sessions, because I've got like a kind of like a laundry list of things that people go through. And, their life just makes more sense and isn't so crazy anymore. And soul retrieval is a very good way to start it. Used to be, soul retrieval was very difficult to do. You had to go to another dimension and talk some little woman out of the soul piece and bring it back, and, it was a big hassle. Now, all these soul pieces are just waiting in line to come back, and that is another evidence that we're in the shift, that things are changing, because it's set up now that these pieces want to come back, and Great Spirit wants people to be whole. So it's much easier to do now than it used to be.
I have to agree with you, definitely. I'm sensing the same thing. It's almost as if the universe is begging us to become whole and complete again. And it's not so difficult if we are open to allowing that to happen, especially when we've got our soul shards. I think of crystals that kind of break off. I was thinking of that movie, The Dark Crystal. I don't know if you remember that. Muppet. It was a Muppet type movie, but the crystal broke off and they had to put it back together. And that's kind of what I visualize when I think of soul trauma, when soul breaks off, a little piece of it due to a trauma. And lately, actually, I myself, I'm utilizing and I'm incorporating, I'm bringing in some of the Reiki symbols to help with that as well. It's just amazing how all of these tools are becoming available for us to do that again, because the universe is waiting for us to become whole again.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and more people need to learn how to do it, because this is something that's up for everybody. It's not just up for people who are healers and light workers, bringing back your lost soul parts. And, I really wish that we could get something organized to work with veterans who've been so traumatized, to help them, because it makes such a big difference. I talked to Danny and Brinkley, who has the largest hospice organization for veterans. He's the Saved by the Light guy who died, and they sent him back, and he agrees. We need to get some people trained to work with these people who've been traumatized, because that's part of what's keeping the earth down. The more people who are caught in trauma and drama, which has been inflicted upon us, the less the earth is able to rise up as a consciousness, as a Gaia consciousness. And so, God bless them.
Yeah.
Let's all just,
That's great.
a lot to fight out to them.
I can't help but think, as well as those of us who are just now having our awakening, for lack of a better term. And I remember when I had my first awakening and I started seeing, or actually my guides showed me everything that's been happening, on the earth, whether it be war or pollution or, all of the corruption and government, and et cetera, et cetera. And when we wake up to that, it is very traumatic. Just the experience of waking up is very traumatic, and I can see how utilizing something like soul retrieval would help us along our journey to ascension, even if we're, again, that initial shock of, oh my God, this world is crazier than I thought,
Well, I don't want people to get all, more traumatized by listening to what we say. I look at it as a healing crisis. When you detox and when you're clearing out a lot of old stuff, a lot of times you feel really crappy, like you've got the flu. And if you multiply that to a world consciousness level, that's what's happening now. We're at there's a light at the end of the tunnel where everybody's going to be lifted up and work on a higher level. And those who don't, those who hold on to all their heavy energy and anger and fear-mongering and things like that, they're not going to do well at all. But the people who are ready and willing and able to clear a lot of this heavy energy out and work from more of a space of compassion and love and cooperation and unity, and forget all those ideas about separation, knowing that we all are one, they'll do very well and they'll rise up. So we're in a healing process. So people, like, don't give up. This is just the storm before we walk into a much lighter and happier and more pleasant time as fifth-dimensional beings.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us are already kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because so many of us, again, those of us on the journey, or even not on the journey, are just so frustrated and are being, manipulated into that whole divisive mentality. But to remember that we are...
Yeah, you have to cut off the TV and limit where you go on Facebook to more positive places. You have your own little group, and I've got my group for the people that study with me. And, it's a very positive place to be. But if you're just trolling around and, you run into these really negative people, I've been known to call a few people out, too. And I kind of went on a campaign on Facebook to, uplift people and say, hey, wake up, spewing all this stuff isn't helping the people or the planet, and, oh,
yes,
well.
I get you. I got you. So we've mentioned the idea of Ascension a couple times in today's broadcast, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this before, but what is your perception of what Ascension is? We have so many different practitioners, light workers, those of us that are on this healing path, and seems to be a lot of confusion. I'll give you an weird example. I remember back in, was it the London Olympics? I don't know if you remember the story of the positive ETs were going to land in the stadium of the London Olympics, and they were going to meet with all the global leaders, and then they were just going to all take us back on a giant ship. And I'm like, well, I personally don't believe Ascension is being taken back on a giant ship. I don't believe it's the
It goes against that.
What is it? The Rapture? It's like an ET version of the Rapture. For me, it's about raising our consciousness. What does the Ascension mean to you, Azurae?
Well, there's a guy by the name of Sal Rochelle who I was lucky to. A bunch of us were staying over at a lady's house in Raleigh. I was doing a show, and she was sponsoring him for a lecture. And he's really a top-level psychic healer person, and channeled a bunch of stuff from this group called the Founders, which were very high, like 12th dimensional beings, which Christ and Buddha, that's like high spiritual master level. And the way he describes it is that we will... we'll still have our physical body, but we'll be working more out of a fifth dimensional crystalline body, and we'll be actually kind of inhabiting a different dimension, so that those people who are still in 3D trauma, drama, fear, anger could be right next to somebody who's working in the fifth dimension and not even see us. Not even know that we're there, because we're vibrating at a higher level than they are. Almost like, we have little people here, and sometimes people can see them, but most times they can't, because they're working out of the fifth dimensional level. So it's as if there'll be two worlds operating at once, and we'll still have our houses and we'll still have our cars and such, but the people who are working in the fifth dimension age will start turning backward. They'll look younger. They'll live longer. They'll be much more healthy. They'll be peace-centered. They'll work cooperatively. Everybody's intuition is just going to skyrocket, and the people who are in the fifth dimension will be highly telepathic with one another. We've seen some of these things in movies, but
Yeah. Celestine
if people are
Prophecy comes to
interested,
mind.
he has given he gives a description that's better than anybody's that I've ever seen. And we actually did a dowsing program to see how true it was, and what he said was like really right on.
Wonderful.
According to what our dowsing
Right.
program did. So I don't accept anything at face value. I always test it out. And we
Absolutely.
tested that out.
Very good, thank you. And I can't believe it, but we're out of time. We're out of time already. Can you believe it? Tell us a little bit about where our viewers and our listeners can get a hold of you and maybe sign up for some of these courses. Is it at the Amethyst Center website they can find you?
Okay. Yes. There's actually a workshop this weekend. That's a healing workshop, and it's a special one for people who are highly empathic. It's going to start Sunday at 1. Here at the Amethyst Center, which is in Saxton, Virginia, and there's one on the 26th at Tacoma Park Chapel, and then we have Wednesday night classes at the Livestream Center in Roanoke that is at 6. But they can go to www.theamethystcenter.com to find out about the workshop, and shop Azurae Healing Art on Etsy for my online store for my shamanic art.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Azurae.